I would like to introduce our Polyrhachis dives weaver ant colony, which has 5 queens. They live in the Formicades polytower formicarium. It's a large arena without nest part, with 2 entrances and an anti-escape rim at the top. They dominate a large area, so with 100 workers I already had to move them into this bigger formicarium. The nest was built with a little help on the top of the tree. Basically, they like to build on the ground, but back here, this white thing that you can see, this is a heat mat. I've put that on the top to be the most optimal conditions here, and so they can move up on their own. It didn't work at first, but I put the nest which they built on the top of the tree. Later, they fixed and began to expand it, so they finally settled on the top of the tree and stayed there. When they moved on the top of the tree, I noticed that they began to expand their nest in the direction of the heat mat. At first it seemed that this was just a weak attempt, but later they built a very serious nest on the heat mat in the pleasant warm environment. We could say that this part of the nest was almost bigger than the original one on the tree. Then, as the summer came, the heat mat itself turned out to be too hot, so the ideal conditions were reversed, and this part of the nest was already too hot for them. Then they moved back on the tree, and by now this part is slowly starting to break down that was previously built here. It weakens, disintegrates as they walk on it, then it loses its hold and it will probably fall down, or its building materials will be incorporated back into the nest. The humidity is usually around 60%. I ensure this with test tubes filled with water, which I placed at the bottom of the formicarium. These are constantly evaporating, and since the formicarium itself is a relatively closed space, the humidity is trapped inside. There is a single vent on its side. The door above is a closed door. In the nest there's a colony with 5 queens, which reached this number after 1 year from 30 workers. I estimate that there may be 200 or 300 of them. The formicarium itself offers a very interesting sight. We can watch them go up and down on trees, stones and different things for hours. Down here at the base of the cliff, they created their garbage dump. With such a large colony, you have to be very careful to always have water and honey in front of them, and that they also get enough insects so that they don't start eating their own brood. It is a very hard-working species. We also like to recommend it to beginners, because they are very capable. They always find the food that we offer them. They cover a large area during their search for food. They react quickly. If there's any problem with their habitat, they move quickly and use any building material during construction. By the way, the divas have very strong armor. You can safely catch the fugitives with your free hands and return them. You won't harm them. They are very resistant. Sometimes, if I accidentally lock a worker against the door, she still gets up and runs on unharmed. It is also very interesting how harmoniously and dynamically they can develop. One of my favorite observations about this species is that due to the abundant food and ideal conditions, as more and more eggs and larvae appear in the colony, the workers begin to expand the nest with the tissue preceded by the larva. They create new chambers with the larva, so that by the time these larvae turn into pupae and mature workers, by then their nest is much larger than before. In fact, the larvae contribute to the construction of their own future habitat. It is very interesting that they are able to expand their habitat this way.